This is Brittney Griner, and she is in serious, serious trouble.
Brittney Griner is detained in Russia for allegedly having vape cartridges in her luggage at the Moscow airport.
We don't know if the United States government thinks that Brittney Griner is a hostage, but we do know that there is something fishy about her case.
On the 17th of February 2022, Brittney was arriving at Sheremetyevo Airport in northern Moscow. This wasn't an unusual trip for her because every off-season since 2014, she played for the Russian women's EuroLeague team UMMC Ekaterinburg in central Russia. Little did she know that her life was about to change in this routine moment. As Brittney was going through the airport, a sniffer dog was alerted to the contents in her carry-on bag. When her bag was checked, the airport security found vape cartridges, but they weren't just any vape cartridges. These were, according to the Russian Federal Customs Service, containing what they claimed to be hashish oil, or as is otherwise known, THC liquid. Even though this is an illegal substance, Brittney was found with less than a gram of this in her bag, which she says ended up in there by accident. This mistake wouldn't have caused a major legal case in many countries around the world, but the problem for Brittney was that she was in Russia. Brittney was arrested and detained to stand trial in Russian court on charges of drug possession and smuggling, where she faced up to 10 years in prison if found guilty. Griner and her legal team were also facing the Russian courts, which boasts a 99% conviction rate. The only priority at this stage was damage control. Brittney unsurprisingly pled guilty to the charges that were held against her.
I would like to plead guilty on the charges, but I had no intention on breaking any Russian law.
Brittney is yet to be sentenced for the crime. The question remains though, how long will Brittney stay in Russia, and how could the US government help get her home? Well, the answer lies in a prisoner swap with a Tajikistani man held in prison in America known as the Merchant of Death. To fully understand this weird, high-stakes case, you have to briefly go all the way back to the collapse of the Soviet Union. After the Cold War and the collapse of the Soviet Union, there was thousands of Soviet military personnel who were laid off. One of these people was a member of the Soviet Air Force and a translator called Viktor Bout. Viktor is from Tajikistan, which is a former member state of the Soviet bloc. Worrying that all these people who had nobody to work for would revolt against the state, the Russian state opened the doors to a massive surplus of weapons that had been hoarded all across the Soviet Union. This massive surplus of weapons going at low prices, added with the fact that Viktor could speak 6 languages and knew people who could fly planes, provided Viktor the perfect opportunity to get rich. Viktor saw his fortunes in the continent of Africa, the Middle East and South America. With all the conflicts and civil wars and the booming global drug trade going on at the time, there was a huge demand for weapons from militias, terrorist groups and drug cartels. So in 1992, at the age of 25, Viktor bought 3 cargo planes and started his own air freight company, selling and transporting whatever he could. He was even hired by the UN to move peacekeepers. And behind this innocent front, Viktor was selling weapons of mass destruction from the fucking Cold War. Before long, Viktor was making more money than he could imagine off the misery and death of people worldwide. The demand for Viktor's cargo reportedly made his business more valuable than many Fortune 500 companies. He had over 300 staff, 30 aircraft flying worldwide, a never-ending stock, and 4 pockets full of fucking cash. In Viktor's mind, why would he ever stop? Well, the end to Viktor's business would come when the UN were looking to put an end to the influx of weapons into Africa. And when looking for the man that was behind all of these weapons, one name that kept coming up was Viktor Bout. And to make a long story of evasion and hiding short, in 2010 Viktor was eventually arrested in a sting operation in a hotel room in Bangkok. Here, Viktor agreed to sell 100 surface-to-air missiles and approximately 5,000 Kalashnikov rifles to who he thought were members of the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia. But really it was special agents from the United States Drug Enforcement Agency. Here he was arrested and brought back to the USA to stand trial in New York, where he was charged with conspiracy to provide material support or resources to a designated foreign terrorist organisation, conspiring to kill Americans, conspiring to kill American officers or employees, and conspiring to acquire and use an anti-aircraft missile. Of course, he was found guilty in all charges held against him in 2011. But the one thing I don't understand about this case is how Viktor only got 25 years for all this shit. Thanks to him being such a slippery customer, that's all the judge could give him, because there was no evidence that Viktor would have committed the crimes he had been convicted of had it not been for the sting operation. Because of this minimal amount of evidence against Viktor, the Russian state just believes that he's a political prisoner in America. And because their negotiations with America for getting him back didn't work, in 2019 they arrested a former American Marine in Russia called Paul Whelan and tried and convicted him on charges of espionage in a Russian court.
It's a mockery of justice. If they can do this to Paul, they can do this to anyone.
Paul was sentenced to 10 years in a work camp. The US government believes that Paul is being held as a political prisoner in Russia and being used as a bargaining chip to get Viktor back in what would be a huge political victory for Putin. There was another former US Marine arrested in 2019 in Russia called Trevor Reed, who was arrested and charged with assault on a police officer. The Russians' case was so invalid against him that even the judge in the trial started laughing. According to the Americans, Trevor was being held as a bargaining chip too, but this time it worked in the Kremlin's favour, and Trevor was traded for a Russian prisoner in America called Konstantin Yaroshenko, who was held in the US on drug trafficking charges. Putin got Yaroshenko back, however he still has one more on his bucket list: Viktor Bout. Until this point, Paul Whelan hasn't held enough negotiating clout and remains in prison, as does Viktor. But earlier on this year, the perfect opportunity arose for the Kremlin: Brittney Griner. When you think about the demographics that Brittney falls into, you can see how she'd be the ideal bargaining chip for Putin. She's African American, she's part of the LGBTQ community, she's a woman, and on top of all that, she's famous. She meets the perfect criteria for getting the American public to rally behind getting her free at all costs. I can imagine for the Russians that when she touched down in Moscow, it was almost like a dream come true. This happened to be the perfect storm for Putin. He knew that eventually the American public would kick up a storm about Brittney, and rightly so. It may not have been in a day, it may not have been in a month, but eventually the day would come when gun-running Viktor would be back on Russian soil. And now, that day seems closer than ever.